Wow. No, I love that. And I love that you mentioned eating intuitively and deciding what foods are good for you and not. And it's such a good point that you made about the information you're getting. And again, this consultation, I'm sitting there and I'm telling them I like the carnivore diet. I've been on it for almost 5 years and it works really well for me. I believe I'm somewhat of a sugar addict. And so I've been able to do that. But again, I'm not telling everybody they need to do that. I'm telling very few
Right.
people actually they need to do that. And talking to this couple, they're asking me like, do you eat vegetables? And I say, not really. I don't really eat any, but they're fine. There's some vegetables that aren't great. And I'm talking to them like, maybe spinach can be not the best one for everybody to eat all the time. And to hear the husband say, yeah, I never have felt really good when I eat that food. I just thought I
Right.
was supposed to eat that food. It we're up against so much in the nutrition space because everybody is it's saying so many things. You need to do all these things, and not Netflix documentaries. You're right. There's so many of them that come out all the time and are very confusing for people.
Yeah, very confusing. Yeah. And regardless of whatever sort of dietary pattern somebody settles on, a recurring theme that I think is like uh, my opinion, I guess, but based on a recurring amount of evidence I keep coming across, I think the human body, to thrive, not to survive, human body can survive on all sorts of garbage, but to actually thrive, I do believe the human body requires a really animal protein forward diet. Whether or not somebody ends up full carnivore or not is a separate thing. Like I've already said, I'm not full carnivore by any means, but getting enough animal protein really makes a huge difference on whether or not your glucose and insulin levels are at a good place, whether your cortisol is in a good place, your hunger and satiety patterns. I mean, maintaining muscle mass. It's crazy how it always seems to come back to that. And yet, because our dietary policies have been so anti-saturated fat and cholesterol for so many years, and now overtly anti-animal foods for other reasons, in addition to those two already debunked myths, you have people really fearful of consuming animal sourced foods of any kind. Now it's not just meat or egg yolks. Now it's like everything, like animal protein across the whole people are avoiding. And then they don't understand why they're feeling hungrier and sicker and having lower energy levels, and they can't put on muscle mass and they don't have the energy to work out or whatever. And it's like, it does keep coming back to that, ironically.
Yeah, that's another really good point, and that's kind of what I left them with. Is like they asked me, so what should we do about diet? And I said, don't worry about diet. It's not a diet. Just make sure you focus on animal protein. They come with fats. Eat the ones that you like, whatever they are. Add a bit of salt, and then have everything else that you like, and have that be the smaller portion of whatever you do, and you'll probably end up in a great spot. So that's wonderful. The recommendations that we get for protein are absolutely absurd, which obviously
Yes.
a lot about. They're terrible. And you have such an interesting story. I love your personal story because the story we normally hear is somebody wanted to be a dietitian. They went to dietetic school. They practiced for 10, 20 years. It wasn't working. They found a different alternative way to kind of do things. And they maybe changed or maybe they didn't. You went into nutrition school already with some interesting knowledge that not a lot of people have. You already knew about Weston A. Price and ancestral eating. Can you tell us about your journey and why you decided to continue to be trained conventionally, even though you maybe knew that like you might not practice as conventionally as they may have wanted?
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in a family that, I mean, they believed a lot of nutrition myths that have now been thankfully debunked, but nonetheless, they were we were a health conscious household. So there was always a discussion about how food made you feel, and sort of using food as medicine. So that concept really fascinated me from a young age. And so by the time I was a teenager, I was like, I think I want to study nutrition. This is really interesting. And if I go way back, I actually interned with a nutritionist, not at RD, when I was in high school. And at the time, I was vegetarian, actually, fairly recent vegetarian convert, but I was vegetarian nonetheless, and actually not feeling that great, but like telling myself I felt fine, right? You can get away with a lot when you're young.
That's right.
And she was the one who introduced me to Weston Price very gently, but like, hey, you might want to check out this book. Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon, you know, I have a lot of clients who really do actually need more animal protein. Some of them really do need meat to heal. She was dealing with clients with very complex health issues. And so that, like, that book really opened the doors to like, whoa, this whole concept of ancestral eating patterns and not fearing fat, not fearing animal protein or animal foods. Maybe soy isn't the best thing ever. And so that led me to, you know, Dr. Price's original work, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, which is like a, you know, early 1900s text. It's like kind of funny to read because just the tone of it is so not PC at
It's
all.
different.
It's different. Yeah, it's just the sign of the times, right? But he traveled the world and, you know, documented dietary patterns and health issues and the dental health of different cultures. And that really seemed that was definitely very interesting to me. So pretty much overnight, I like stopped being vegetarian and dramatically, I think it started gradually, right? These changes like take time. So it was sort of a gradual, like, okay, it's okay to put butter on my bread again, and like, don't fear the yolks, and cheese is okay, and chicken with the skin is fine. I don't have to throw away the skin, like little things like that over time. But it certainly just, again, like colored the lens through which I saw nutrition science. And so, I mean, I kind of knew going into a university program on nutrition. I don't know that I knew all the differences with like nutritionists and dietetics and the just constant battle between the two professions. But I did know that I'd probably have textbooks that were written with the intent of supporting the, you know, government dietary guidelines. So I didn't take everything that I learned as this is true. I took it as, okay, this is the opinion of the people who wrote the textbooks who are somehow financially related to the people who wrote the guidelines. And so I like had that understanding of the system as a whole as I went through it. And I think that was certainly different from my peers. I remember us doing, you know, a dietary recall nutrient analysis assignment, and my, you know, you look at your macronutrient ratios, and my calories were like something like 50 or 60% calories from fat. And people were like astounded. You know, you have to understand, like, a lot of people who study nutrition, they get into it because of their own body dysmorphia and eating disorder. Like, seriously, it's very
Oh yeah.
sad, but it is what it is. So
Yep.
I have been very fortunate to not have struggled with that, but I, you know, looked like a pretty healthy person. And here I was eating all this fat. I mean, my professors were like, oh, I was like, I don't know what to tell you when I don't eat more fat, like I don't feel well. So I'm not going to reduce this, but like, thanks for your feedback. Right. So I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but I really used my education, my time in university to get access to research articles. You know, when you're a student, you can access anything. So like, okay, this book is saying this, is it true? I'm going to research vitamin D. I'm going to research vitamin K2. At the time, there was like almost no research on vitamin K2. I'm going to research phytic acid and fermenting grains. And does that have any difference? And I'm going to research how this guideline was set for whatever. And so that I kind of used my education as like a springboard for further exploration rather than just like an indoctrination camp, which is really, I think, what it ends up being for a lot of professionals. When it came to whether or not I wanted to continue and actually get my credential, it was like, well, I've already done all this work. If you want people to take you seriously, having letters behind your name is helpful. And you can be a change maker, you know, after the fact. So there was a lot of like smiling and nodding, a little bit of, you know, pushing back on some things. I certainly didn't get the best grades on some of my projects on, you know, Splenda being toxic and stuff like that. But, you know, I think I kind of approached it a little more playfully. So yeah, by the time I was in the field, I mean, I yeah, I already knew a lot beyond what just the guidelines are. And I
Yeah.
think it's actually almost helpful in a way to come at it go through the conventional lens, because you see where the box is and you see where the guidelines are incorrect. And so it's kind of funny that my work is still like educating people about how guidelines are not always based on the most solid evidence, and yet it takes this like abundance of additional data in order for us to change them.
Yeah.
It's pretty frustrating, but it is what it is. You can follow whichever guidelines or not that you want to. You have your own free will. So I'm here kind of like helping the people who want to kind of look beyond those and do their best for optimal health, whether that's for pregnancy, fertility, postpartum, really focusing on the women's health aspect.